Dude, this is ridiculous. Here you go.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Monster Bass Live that's riddled with a couple technical challenges here in the back house. But I promise that we got a banger of a show for you today. Good to see everybody. We got Mike Anselmo on the show today from Untamed Tackle. We're going to learn a little bit about him and what he's gone through in his pursuit of entrepreneurism. We got the clip of the week. We got some golden tickets. We're gonna have a special. Show code for you that I'll get into later. But before we get started and get everyone in, I just want to brag a little bit because my fantasy team is in first place with one loss. Once again, Travis Kelce. I need to thank Taylor Swift. Whatever you're doing, Taylor, keep doing it because Travis is smoking it, and my team is rolling. So. Just a reminder that you can subscribe to our podcast anywhere you like to subscribe to podcasts, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, all your favorite places. And if you like what you see today, give us a good thumbs up. Nice to see everyone in the chat. Really excited to see you guys. And I'm really excited. So let's just bring on Chris and let's get started here. How's it going, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Today's a good day. I'm feeling good, and I don't know. It's good to be here. Excited.
Now you're on a 3-day fast. You're finishing one up, right?
This is it. Yeah, I'm done. I get to eat dinner tonight. I don't know why I did it. You kind of inspired me a while ago. You said you were on like a pretty good cleanse, like a 7-day or something. Yeah. So figured, I'm at that age. It's fun to kind of mess around with health, and so 3 days, just water, a little bit of tea, and I feel great. So I'm excited. Dude. But I'm really hungry. Like I like food. Yeah. And so I even told Kelly, like, let's eat like a really good dinner. Like I want salmon, maybe some salad. Like I'm excited with true like gratitude to be able to eat food. So I can't wait.
Yeah. I thought I'd mix things up myself today. I don't know if you can see this, but
oh my gosh, that's so great. I'm excited. Yeah. I love it.
So if anyone wants to support, you can head over to Fishing the Lone Star and you can score one of these T-shirts from his partner Honey Hole Outdoors. That's I wanted to show some support for Jeremy because he's always a big fan, supporter of the show, and it's a cool T-shirt. I like the blank; it's comfortable, and it shows that you got a little love for him. So.
Looks good. No, I mean, I lived in Texas. I got to have one of those. Plus, I can wear it at like kind of mildly inappropriate times to show him I'm doing kind of bad things to his shirt. So it'll be fun. No, I'm excited.
Yeah.
That's great.
So before we get started, I just want to apologize to everybody that may have gotten kicked out at the beginning. Not sure what happened. We're trying to make it so Rafi can be on the show a little bit more. So we've got him in the main house, and I'm back in the bat cave, and we're going to see how it goes. So I'm excited for that. But I'm also excited for our guest today. So let's not wait any longer. So let's give a big show welcome from Mike from Untamed Tackle. How's it going, man?
Yeah. That's the big show welcome. Yeah, I require bigger.
All right. I'll have an Altoid. Hold on.
I'm just gonna get you way beyond the golf clap. Welcome. I'm a reformed jig. I'm not like a jig addict. I can't wait for today. So this is good.
Yeah. So what's going on, man?
Truthfully, you guys are talking about fasting and starving and all this, and I made mention of it before everybody was able to jump on. But like whatever weight you think you're losing, I'm gonna pick it up. Outside of just the tackle business, I do some other things for some other brands of fishing, and I trade show for dough for about 7 weeks leading up to Christmas. And I'm going to find everything that isn't good to eat along the way. So once we get to that New Year's kind of time of year, I'll be the guy in the gym with the resolution that's trying to figure it out. But at 44, it doesn't fall off as quick as it did at 34.
Cry me a river. I'm 55, I know, like, man.
Rick and I, we got this whole thing. Like, I'm 52. We have the same birthday. Like, you're just a kid. But I'll tell you, if you embrace the idea of a dirty bulk, just the term, you're dirty bulking, it makes it super fun. So you're just on a fun dirty bulk. Enjoy it.
Fair. Fair. you go on many different sort of journeys here in your life. I never thought that a combination of fasting, exercise, what I put into my body, like all this stuff, like it does make a difference. And I'm a believer, for sure. Um, but yeah, like the things that you have to deal with that in your 40s that you never thought of in your 20s.
It's a lot. It's a lot. So, all right. So how did we get here today? So you and I met like, I don't know, like
randomly in a trade show hall at ICAST 6 or 7 years ago. And when I say random, I mean like you were walking in the aisle and like legitimately I may have like run into you. Like and it was just like who are you? What do you do? Oh, I'm Rick. Who are you? What do you do? I'm Mike. And I don't know. It's just kind of a strange deal. Like we've just always sort of stayed in touch for one reason or another. I have no great explanation for even having any kind of relationship with you. We just always managed to stay in touch. So,
for sure.
Back then, I was working full time for Stryker as a marketing manager. I think you had an ice fishing box that came out. I had some depth weights, which in 2024 nobody even hardly knows what that is anymore. But way back when, 7 years ago, you took one of these depth bombs, and that's how you kind of adjusted your line depth for a tip up or a set line up here through the ice. And I had a bunch laying around. You had these boxes. It was just a good opportunity to do something.
Now, ice fishing, is that something that you do regularly?
Oh yeah. It has such this weird stigma. If you live outside of where we live, people want to know, like, so you like drive on the ice with a car and, you drill holes in it. And I don't know if I can swear on the show or not. I chose not to though.
Okay.
But the idea here, like, if you live here and it's part of, you understand the culture. And yeah, we do all 4 seasons. So, spring, summer, fall, and winter all have very hard and fast start and stop dates here. And, when the winter time comes, I mean, honestly, if you're an outdoorsman, you are either ice fishing, snowmobiling, like you just don't turn that off, right?
Hunting.
You find something, sure, but even that ends like right around the first of the year. I mean, it might trail into January a little bit, but people start getting excited here now. It's always right around January 1st. And yeah, we've already had our first snow. We had a show at a Shields store in St. Cloud, Minnesota last weekend, and it was, snow and sleet and slush. And I mean, people show out to, get ready for the season, which is typically always begins right around Thanksgiving.
Isn't it just an excuse to drink?
Well, sure. So it is a little bit different because it can be so much more social than a lot of the other things that you do in terms of, fishing, quote unquote. So, there are the 1%ers that like the companies all market to, and that's your, cross country travel, go and explore, drill a million holes until you find them. And, you've got your otter sled behind your Polaris snowmobile, and you've got all the live scope stuff, and like it's like mission fishing. And then there's the other crowd. It's what I call your wheelhouse crowd, the ice hack castles and the Yeti houses. There might be 4, 6, 8 people in one of these, and you might have a small group of them, 2, 3, 4 of them, kind of all by each other. It's basically ice camping, and that's when
I'm all about that. That's awesome. Yeah.
Dude, that's when you get the beanbag boards out, and like you don't need a cooler because it's cold out, so the beer just sits on the ice. And yeah, you fish a little bit, but it's hanging out. Like you do, it's just part of where we.
I feel like it's something that we need to do this year. Yeah, like
cool.
Chris, don't you think that would be kind of fun for a day?
I'm dying to do it. My wife kind of put parameters, as long as there's a tent, maybe a Mr. Heater, like a couch would be nice, but I don't have to have a couch. But just like that idea of getting together socially, goofing off, fishing, honestly, needs to be secondary. That camaraderie you build to have those experiences. I'm an ice camping expert, I could say. I've built snow caves for like 25 years with the Scouts. Love to go out in the snow, love the cold temperature, but to do that and to casually hang out and fish as an activity, let's do it. I'm in.
I feel like it's something Rafi would like. Rafi, wouldn't you like ice fishing? Okay. We can't hear Rafi. So there you go.
Rafi.
All right, no Rafi.
Well, for the record, I'm not going in your ice cave.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna cold plunge. I'm telling you, you got a cold plunge. I'm gonna bring a sauna. We're gonna do some contrast therapy. This could be a whole new experience for you. So it'll be fun.
I get it. I can tell you this, but there's so much, we've done so much in the way of technology to make ourselves comfortable that the idea of going out there to freeze my butt off, it just doesn't sound great.
Yeah.
No, that's only 3 minutes of it. We're gonna do that. Like it's your New Year's resolution. You can do your dirty bulk till January, and then we need to come ice fish. You'll be pumping it in the gym. We'll go out and do our little therapy and fish. It'd be awesome. That'd be
Fine.
cool.
You know what we call that here though? That's a thing here. It's called a polar plunge.
Right, polar plunge.
I like that. I'm down with that.
Yeah, plunge and all these brands that are out there. They think they invented something. Like you guys have been you've been polar plunging forever. So let's do it.
I love it.
Right. I'm in.
All right, so you've held many positions within the fishing industry. You've been in the industry for like 20 years, right? Or whatever it's been. And now we hear Rafi in the background. Anyway, so you've been in the industry for a while.
Yeah.
How many? Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say this is sort of like a weird.
That's moving. That seems to be working.
Oh my God, you two. All right, go ahead.
It's like a weird combination journey of like two careers that have all blended together. So I spent the first portion of my, I guess, adulting life working in broadcast media, and getting to do, it was basically, in the fishing world, it would be everything non-endemic. So I worked with, everything from Vikings football to sports radio, country music, the pop stations here in town. Like iHeart Media at the time had 7 radio stations. And I did the producing for that stuff and eventually moved into sales and found an opportunity to take what I had learned there from a sponsorship sales standpoint, media standpoint, and work kind of on a freelance basis as a 1099 for a local outdoor television property at the time and start doing work for him. All of this turned into, it was like what you learned back then and what you learn, now in the second part of your life all sort of led me to where I am today. So as a 1099, you work with a lot of different people. And I sold those sponsorships and properties to Stryker, which led me to being a marketing manager for those guys. Opened a door to relationships with Northland Fishing Tackle, who was just recently in the news of being acquired by GSM. And I got great relationships with and friends at companies like Rapala and Otter Outdoors, Garmin, who I also I'm lucky enough to get to do some work for. So fast forward all these years later, I was sort of in a position that I decided that I like working for myself. I like having my fingers in a lot of different kind of deals as far as fishing and outdoors is concerned. And, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world.
How many drinks did it take before you got together with your wife and said, listen, honey, I'm going to leave a secure payday and I'm going to go the route of building my own company?
Yeah. But it's interesting, right? So I was the director of marketing and e-commerce for Northland Fishing Tackle, and her and I talked about it. I just wanted to do something else. I did. And she's beyond supportive. I don't know why. And like, I joke around about it all the time. It's like, am I at the beginning, the middle, or the end of my midlife crisis? I'm not sure, but who just quits their job without a plan. And I really didn't have one. So, when the Untamed opportunity came up, it wasn't an accident. It was a seed that had been planted, years and years prior. So, in one of those former lives, I had met a young guy named Kyle Welcher, who was a rookie that was coming on the Bassmaster Elite Series. And at the time, it was just myself and one other company, and Untamed Tackle were his only two sponsors. So being, everybody scratches each other's backs, right? So I just bought some of the tackle. I'm a bass fisherman, and I really liked the stuff. I thought the components were great. There was a fair amount of detail that went into the design. They were all drawn and you could tell, it was just very specific. Each jig design was specific for its particular use. And years went by, and I told Kyle Welcher, I'm like, hey man, if there was ever opportunity there, I'd like to know about it. And that all happened legitimately after I told my wife that I'm going to do something else. So I was done at Northland on a Friday. On a week later, the following Tuesday or whatever it was, I was in my truck on the way to Paducah, Kentucky to pick up the remaining inventory from this Untamed Tackle brand. And it's ready, set, go. You're got your own e-commerce deal. Like it or not, ready, set, go.
And so day one, you've got all the stuff. What do? I mean, I know there's a ton of people out there that have these dreams and visions of starting their own tackle company. You picked up one that, was not in its infantile stage. It was already, somewhat established.
Yeah, but in very small pockets. So, right. It was interesting. The guy that had owned it was actually lived in Minnesota when he created it and moved it to Georgia when he moved. So it spent the first portion of its life here where I live in, Twin Cities area. The second part of its life in Georgia, in the heart of, bass fishing, the bass fishing Southeast. A great part of the country to live in for what we make. And only to have me drive, halfway down there to pick it up and bring it back here. So, it's just one of those deals that worked itself out over time. I would say, how do you plan for that? How do you give somebody advice on how to do it? For me, it wasn't, school of hard knocks, really how it worked out. I learned through, 15 years of doing other work, how to do this, how to run a Shopify store, how to read your insights and your social media and your business suite to find out if anybody's paying attention to what you're doing or not.
Sure.
If you do have any money, which, you're bootstrapping it like I am in the beginning, where do you spend it and how do you judge your return on ad spend fairly? How do you know if anything that you're doing is working for you? And the honest truth in the beginning is you just figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's like anything else, you just hustle your way through it.
Yeah. I totally get it. And I know this resonates with Chris because he also has a side hustle, and it's definitely a challenge when you get started trying to figure out where to spend even one penny because your funds are so limited that
now I'm really lucky.
How so?
I have Kyle, so Kyle Welcher was last year's Bassmaster Angler of the Year, which, some people follow BASS, some people don't. It's okay. But I'm super fortunate in the sense that I've got an endorsement partner that, his name carries some weight in the industry. And, when you talk about design and you talk about thoughtfulness in your product, you could do a lot worse than having the, Bassmaster Angler of the Year, who's a known power fisherman as your right hand. So, not everybody gets that. I think everybody would love the opportunity to have that chance. So, I kind of backed into it in an interesting way and acquired it, because of a relationship, with him in a former life. But, the rest of it is still a ton of hustle. Like, it's always you're always looking at your spreadsheet going, okay, well, how do I get to this number in sales? How do I get to, how do I get to this? How do I get to this next step in product development? How do I do all these things? And, I used to spend somebody else's marketing dollars.
A lot easier.
I used to,
It's more
be a
fun,
part
man.
of somebody else's thing. Right. And
Yeah.
yeah. And now you kind of look around and go, all right, well, I guess my dogs are, my CFO and, my sales manager. So you just figure it out.
Totally.
Yeah, it's cool because you and I talked a little bit prior to the show and introducing your brand, and then I went to do my homework. And you mentioned Kyle as an angler, but Kyle's a businessman. We talk about promotional staff versus professional staff. He's obviously a professional fisherman. That guy's a promotional genius. He's like, to have quickly looking at his social media and seeing that your collaborations, he has you on his page. He's got 25,000 followers. He's not just out focused just on fishing. He understands the business side of representing your brand as well. So like, what a cool opportunity to have him connected with you. Guaranteed, obviously justifies the brand being put in use at the top of the game of fishing, but also he's a marketing tool. So like, what a neat relationship that you can walk into something like that. And obviously you guys have hit that off to build a relationship. And I think I just met you and talking to you and your relationship, how you connected with Rick. And it's like, man, I want to go ice fishing with this guy. Like, you obviously have that gift of like, man, I want to hang out with him. Like, this would be fun. Like, where's Mike live? And so having that, understanding all of the tools you had, it's not like you jumped off a cliff and said, hey, I'm going to go try something new. You've already done this, and you're now able to utilize all those skill sets you have to kind of take a brand. And it's interesting. You went to jigs, and I want to talk more about that as we go, because jigs, I think maybe sometimes are the most unglamorous piece of bass fishing, but that's for future. We'll let Rick go ahead, Rick. But I think it's cool that you have an angler that's not just an angler. He's also a spokesperson for the brand. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when I talk to a lot of brands, and every time I talk to someone that makes jigs, I'm like, man, you got to sell a lot of jigs. You got to sell a lot of jigs. And as someone who's relatively newer to fishing, I ask myself, like, what's the difference? Like, isn't a football head jig a football head jig? Like, okay, there's different skirts and different hooks, but what makes a jig better than another jig?
That's a great question. And I think if you put 20 more people on this call and you asked everybody that question, you might get 20 different answers. But I think the common theme amongst them will be like those thoughtful design tweaks. So you can ask lead and to do a lot of different things in terms of making all these shapes, and now tungsten, like, as that's started to evolve. But it's how you design it and what is it now specific for. So when I was growing up fishing, it was like, if you clipped it, it was probably a Stanley jig, and you drug it through grass, through brush, through rocks, and hit every dock pole or bridge piling that you could with it. It was like a 4-wheel drive mechanism for power fishing for bass. And the evolution of that is sort of been like, okay, what if you give somebody the option of, if they could only have like 3 rods on their deck, one of them's going to be a jig, one of them's probably going to be a chatterbait, and one of them's probably going to be a soft plastic of some kind, Senko, likely. The jig is just really versatile by nature. So if you took that one catch-all product and you asked it to be a swim jig, a grass jig, a wood jig, and a rock jig all at the same time, you could pull it off. But it's 2024. We have the ability to tweak and design things. We have hook manufacturers that build things special for us based on need. And so then you have a little brand like mine, or a great big brand like Strike King, that is trying to super serve the needs of the angler by creating a structure jig meant for skipping docks and flipping wood, like we have with our ace jig, or multiple different versions of a swim jig meant to match, the profile of the bait fish in any particular system, big or small. Skirt colors, a combination of hook sizes. There's so much that can go into it. It's again like you're super serving an angler's need using, I guess, a common name. If you categorize everything as a jig, that's really a blanket statement. But when you boil it down, I mean, there's so many subcategories to jigs. You can go deep down that rabbit hole.
Sure. And when you're designing a jig, like how long does that process take?
Well, I think for like us, it's a little bit different. So I don't have 100 other variations of, SKUs and product lines and soft plastics and hard baits and all this stuff that we're trying to do. Like we focus, like I want to stay very narrow with what I'm creating and who I'm selling it to. So that for us, that's primarily skirted bass jigs. So when we're thinking about creating the next version of that, and I'll just kind of peel back the curtain a little bit on what we're doing. Like our best-selling product is the ace jig, Kyle Welcher's ace jig. It was sort of the one of the original products that he came in and created, built and designed with I guess a shape that allows this thing to, let's see if I'm in the camera here or not. That allows it to skip really well and fish through brush really clean, based on design. So what's the evolution of your best-selling product? Well, for us, I mean, it's to go into, I guess, that super serve nature of the beast and go to the baby ace. So if we've got a full-size ace jig, that's a compact jig with a thin cut skirt that is sort of your, what do? I pick up my half-ounce ace jig and go fishing. Okay. If the crawfish are small, if the bluegills are small, if, we've got a small run of shad in the system, we can take the same jig, the same shape, and not recreate the wheel and reinvent this particular jig, which has been so good for us, but let another great hook. Let's see if Gamakatsu can provide us with a smaller hook that'll fit a slightly redesigned version of this, where we can scale down our offering, for when if conditions get tough, like I said, a bait fish get small, whatever it is, just give you the option that in the back of your mind, if you're fishing and you go, man, I like this, but I wish it was just a little smaller, or, this is a great product. I wish it was a little bit bigger with a longer skirt. Like that's what I think I'm able to do that, bigger brands can't always. It's really hard to turn that big ship. I'm a little guy. I can pivot fast and, add product, make changes. That's the benefit of product development when you're little bitty.
Yeah.
The downside of it is, I'm playing with my own money. So if you're gonna win, you're chasing it and you're trying to find more. If you lose, like, hopefully you lose fast and you lose small and you can just move on to the next.
Yeah. I know Chris has some questions, so.
No, I'm excited. I mean, just the jig thing. I love jigs. I'll just tell you my background with fishing, of like being serious about bass fishing for over 10 years now. I shied away from jigs just because I was fishing in an area that was just really weedy and grassy and muddy, and they just didn't perform as well for me. As I moved out into deeper water in Northern California and all these reservoirs, jigs just work. And I kept hearing like jigs for bigs and all these discussions about catching big fish. I'm a converted jig fisherman. I know now if I go out fishing and I just need to catch a fish, I don't care what time of year it is, I can catch a good fish with a jig. But I also found using different size jigs, you touched on it for a minute, and having those specific tiny differences. Sometimes it's a micro jig or whatever you want to call it, but jigs without weed guards, when fish are a little bit more hesitant, and removing the weed guard on some of the smaller jigs just a little bit easier because it requires a little less hook set, but at the same time, it's an easier, softer take for a fish, and it's more subtle. So without that weed guard, it's important for me. I sometimes modify my own jigs. Looking at your product line, what number one bestseller? Where do you like, as far as Rick was asking about designing jigs? What is next in your
Mhm.
mind for the jigs? Because I think the jigs, I love the diversity that you have in your product line. Give us, if you can, some insight of like what's the next jig you're looking at producing without giving away your secrets. But I'm always curious of like, how do you take a jig and make it better?
Yeah. So this year we came out with a couple new products. We did launch our breacher jig, which is that's sort of our grass. That'd be our grass flipping jig, like 1/2 ounce, 5/8 ounce, 3/4 ounce. It's a product that is meant to punch through coontail, milfoil, really get that reaction bite in thick, heavy cover. Could be heavy brush too, but I mean, it really fishes well and is meant to fish in heavy grass. So we covered that base. We have the Ace jig, which is our structured jig. We have the Juggernaut football jig, which serves that purpose. And then we've got like a really good line of swim jigs. So what we're going to do for next year is expand on that Ace jig platform. We are going to come out with the baby Ace. To have that 2/0 hook with a really stout Gamakatsu hook in it, a custom soft weed guard that fits the head shape well, and we'll have 2 sizes in that, and 1/4 and 3/8 ounce size. That's a jig that you can fit spinning rods. So traditionally when you'd pick up a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce Ace jig, you were sort of going to be pigeonholed into having casting gear and pitching that thing either on braided line or, heavy fluorocarbon under docks and into trees and whatnot. Having that baby Ace, I think, is going to allow some people to, it's a downsized approach, but you're going to be able to throw that on spinning gear, especially, in that 1/4 ounce size. That's an offering that they aren't used to seeing. So
Yeah,
those fish and dock styles.
you're touching on that strolling style of fishing. I see that you have just some plain jig heads that obviously fit that bill, and people can use a Ned rig. Or it's fun to see a Ned rig on your site because it's a jig, but to have an actual jig with the skirt that you can flip out there, you can use your forward facing sonar, you can manipulate that lightweight jig. I think that's a really cool offering that's not really out there in the market. So it's neat to see that. It's fun to talk to a person that has a brand of baits that you're really keyed into it. I mean, that's just really fun for me, is like, I kind of geek out on it sometimes about the jigs, and then seeing, are you looking at adding any, because this is the whole movement of some of a swim jig. Are you ever looking at adding blades to those, having an underspin or an overspin on your swim jigs?
I've looked at it. It has to be something that is different enough where I feel like it'll fill a niche. So to make these smaller versions of a few different skirted jigs for next year, I think there's an opportunity there because nobody is really doing it, and the fish the fish haven't seen it. So if I just go and make the next greenfish underspin, well, I didn't accomplish anything. I just ripped off their idea, and first in typically always wins. So, I don't necessarily want to be that. If I find a better mousetrap and I think it is unique enough, sure, we could eventually go there. But in the short term, I mean, we've gotten so much good feedback on the Ace jig, and it sells well, through Tackle Warehouse. We have some products that we know the angler likes them. The angler's desire for the product in some cases has outweighed my ability to even market it, and that's all you ever want as a brand, right? Is the customer to come looking for it because they heard about it from somebody. So if I do that with some type of a bladed platform, it'll just have to be unique to us and different enough to make a difference to the consumer.
It's awesome. I love it. Yeah. So you're fishing. When you go fishing, do you lean towards using a jig more now that you own a jig company?
Uh, I've always I've always fished the jig. Like
That,
it's forever never been my favorite way to fish. They're
that's awesome.
a heavy action rod, heavy line, and a jig between a half ounce and 3/4 of an ounce. There's no better bite, and I mean you get to absolutely lay the wood to them when you set the hook. This is a like I mean this is you're hitting in the 4 spot. Like we're not trying to get on base. Like these are hard hook sets. You're fishing
Yeah.
big stuff, and I mean you're trying to pull them out of heavy cover. I forever will love to fish jig. Always have.
Yeah, I mean, we always try to have something on the show, the takeaway for people at home and somebody listen to this later on. I fished a lot with a lot of beginners and kids. I have 6 kids, and so giving a kid a worm, they honestly can accidentally catch a fish. That fish can puff its
Mhm.
gills, suck that worm in, start swimming away, and as just the tug of it, that small little hook can pierce the jawline and catch the fish.
Yeah.
Jigs, that just doesn't happen, and that's my joy, is having this experience where you physically have to do something and correctly set the hook to get that fish in. So just the key in is like, don't be discouraged when you first start catching fish with jigs or using a jig, because you will cast it out until you learn the subtle differences of that feedback from the rod. That bite, you actually have to react to it to get. I've caught a couple fish on accident where they like, I'm cast it out, and you're, whether you're on your phone or tying your shoes, you might accidentally get a fish to make the tug and then still be there when you pick up the rod. But a jig, you do have to respond normally. So that's the fun for me, is you're now involved in the catching. And that, like you said, setting the hook, I don't think there's a bait where that requires it, but also allows you to set the hook that strong. So I think that's the takeaway for me, is jig fishing, you have to be actively involved. It requires the reaction. So that's kind of fun for an angler.
And that's all you're trying to get out of the fish. So I mean, it's a bulkier profile. You're not. I mean, it's really not too fancy. A lot of times, if you're going down the bank or you're fishing brush piles, I mean, it's the bait is in and out of there in a fairly quick fashion. You make your pitch. A lot of times, the bait it gets hit on its fall as a reaction strike, maybe on the first or second hop, and then you're kind of pulling it out of whatever cover you threw it into, and then you're on to the next cast, just like that. So, I mean, it really is sort of a cornerstone product when it comes to power fishing for bass.
I love it.
Love it. Love it. We got we got a 12-year-old watching who's going to have a couple questions. So when he posts them, I want to make sure we answer them for him, because
That's cool.
anything we can do to help the little guy out.
Absolutely. I'll be ready.
All right. So
We get that a lot.
what's that?
Like questions, feedback.
Yeah.
And I mean, I like to engage with people when they ask questions. Like most of the time it's a private message, because I think people are maybe a little embarrassed. Like, not that bass fishermen by any means are these, masculine guys that, know everything, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you get a lot of messages offline like, hey, like, how do you fish that? And I love responding to stuff like that.
Yeah. Someone asked, isn't everything that doesn't involve a treble hook really just a jig of some sorts?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. That's sort of a loaded question, I guess. Maybe. I guess it all came from somewhere. It required weight to bring a bait to the bottom. So sure, it's not wrong. A bullet weight is basically just if you took a jig and separated it and let it slide up and down the line,
Yeah.
we're not far off. It's just the vessel.
So I do have a question. So going back to the marketing side, so you rely heavily on social media and One Pro for all of your marketing, and then of course you attend shows. How often are you on guest on podcasts? Like what is your go to market strategy to get this brand to become a household name?
Sure. I mean, honestly, and I've got a couple other some guys that help us and invite to collaborate, some pro staff, if you will,
Sure.
on the social channels. But it really is a brand um, that I'm trying to build up, like through, like really just straight through social. So the distribution that it had when I took it over, we sort of kind of got rid of almost all of it. We've got a great relationship with Tackle Warehouse that I appreciate so much, because I think they're a great marketing vehicle, as much as they are a sales channel. And it really does help spread the brand name when a retailer like that is, when they want your product, you really feel like you did something right.
For sure.
So, for me, I am a social media frequency, like, monster, in terms of like my, how I theorize like all these marketing plans to work now moving forward. I'm not trying to win an Oscar with every video that's made. There will be no awards given for the quality of the photography at the end of the week. So, through the peak of your season and the bulk of your season, like, control what you can control. And what I mean by that is just stay active, be active, make sure your pages have fresh content that people are able to digest. I don't get a big rise anymore out of the amount of follows and likes that any one page gets. And I manage some other pages for businesses in this industry. What I really look at is the amount of people that I'm reaching. And that's a combination of your followers and non-followers. And what I've found is that just through the sheer frequency of my activity on the Untamed Tackle pages, or in the other brand pages that I manage, like, that is that's what drives results for me. I can affect a lot of things before I spend one paid dollar on my marketing strategy during a certain time of the season. So organic activity, all based on frequency, that really is my strategy.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. We got a question from Tristan, who would like to know, what is the best bait to use in a shallow, dirty pond? That's where he fishes. Nice. I'll throw that out to both you guys.
Ooh, best bait to use in a shallow. If you're asking me about one of my products, I would tell you that a mini swim, an Apex, and a mini swim or an Apex swim jig in a 1/4 ounce in some sort of a white or shad color is a really tough bait to beat when you're fishing from the bank, or you're fishing from a boat in like shallow, largemouth, kind of water. Visible in dirty water. And I mean, you put some kind of a kicker tail on there, like a cleanup craw, or a rage menace or something like that on the back, and you've got a pretty great combination. A lot of pictures from young people, in particular, the last year, with that mini swim that we make in a pepper shad color, from the bank and from the boat.
Nice. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go if it's summertime and you have a chance to fish a shallow, like a little dirty pond like that at top water. If you throw a frog or something, just because it's going to be a lot of fun to see something hit the top. But an easy one, of course, I'm a huge fan of the Neko rig, just a Cinco. But Mike nailed it. If you can put something in dirty water that has a boot tail, a kick tail, and you can cause some vibration underwater, those fish probably in a pond. I mean, limited by the size, depending on how big it is. I fish a lot of ponds where we live. And if you could throw kind of a smaller bait out there, chances of getting something just skyrocket. So, just fish the size, fish the conditions, of course. But his bait that Mike recommended, use that everywhere. I mean, that's literally, if you can take something that's fish colored, fish shaped, you literally take a swim jig with the boot tail on the back of it and throw it and retrieve it. You're gonna fish eat fish, like you're gonna catch a fish. So that's great advice right there.
That's it.
All right.
Yeah, and I fish those. The swim jig kind of changed me with fishing a jig, because I fish swim jigs, and you catch fish on the fall, you catch fish on the retrieve. You can dead stick a swim jig. I started fishing swim jigs specifically in about 25 feet of water, and I was converted to jig fishing by a kid that was in my scout program. Took him on a boat one night, and he's casting in the dark. We're fishing at night, and he's just barely moving this thing. Bam, 3-pounder. Like, what in the world's going on? He's just casting it out, letting it fall, barely twitching it, has his boot tail. So as he lifts it, it kind of swam. And I was like, what are you using? He's like, oh, swim jig. I'm like, get out of here. That's not the normal way of fishing a swim jig. And he's just fish after fish. And so I'm like, that worked pretty good. And so then, of course, the next day I sneak out and sneak practice myself and use that same exact style swim jig with your Kitech style trailer just to make it generic so people understand, and could fish it so many different versatile ways. And I caught so many fish. I was like, oh, well, if I'm out here to catch fish, that seemed pretty successful. And that was a conversion, I'm going to say 7 years ago, where like, you can't find a day if you're looking at my tackle that a rod's not tied up with some sort of jig on it. So I think you nailed it.
Right on. What, we got a couple more questions. What's the rig that's a drop shot with a jig instead of a weight?
So donkey rig, jackass rig.
No.
So yeah,
With the jig, the drop.
I've done that. Like, you can use, if you tie your normal drop shot hook and you leave a trailer and down to connect your weight, you can put a small jig. You can, like, a Ned rig works great on the bottom. So you have a Ned rig bait at the bottom, and then you have your normal drop shot worm or whatever you're going to use up about a foot. I teased once, I'm like, only a jackass would do that because it's a jackass rig. But I use that because you have, effectively, when you go in the ocean and you're fishing something, a lot of times you have multiple baits. In bass fishing, it's like, oh, you can only use one bait at a time, and that became kind of the norm. But having two baits strung up, you can, what's great, throw some kind of jig on the bottom. You can use a tube on the bottom, but you can still have that upper presentation. So you can have two baits at one time.
They'd throw you in jail here in Minnesota that's like two different lines. They'd just send you straight to jail.
Yeah.
For real?
One line, man.
One line, one bait. California, you have to have a double rod license. Some places you can't use two baits. So that's the reality, is can you use two hooks? Can you throw an umbrella rig? When I say these things, you need to know your local water. So that's the reality of it.
We got a question from Brandon. He wants to know, is the jig feasible for fishing when the bottom's really muddy, like the kind where you can sink a foot or so into the mud?
100%. So that's when a lot of your swim jig applications really kind of come into play. So, I've got, let's see if I can get this here centered in the front of the camera. This is a 1/4 ounce junk jig and a full silicone skirt on it. When you put a piece of plastic on this, you can throw it a mile, like with casting gear or a spinning rod if you want. When this is dressed up and you go to fish that, this falls so slow in the water that it's going to fish, almost like a Senko in terms of like its fall rate. It really falls slowly through the water. So even if you're not swimming it on a tight line fast back across the bottom, you can really just kind of lift and pull on that bait and, watch it sort of, kind of rise and fall in the water without really ever making contact, with the bottom. That's a really popular way to fish in those conditions. Just because it's muddy doesn't mean that, the fish aren't willing to, chase something on or near the bottom. It just makes it harder to you to fish it because it's coming back to you with so much gunk on it that you're getting frustrated because you got to clean it off all the time. Well, just change your brain. The tool's still the same. It's just you got to use it a little bit different for the job.
Yeah, and I'll second that. The dust cloud, I fish at a reservoir across the street from my house. It's 50 years old. It's completely impacted with sediment. I've scuba dove in it. You touch the bottom and this dust cloud comes up. But imagine that dust cloud is what the fish see. Throw that bait out there, let it make contact. If it's not going to get a bunch of debris on it, use this dust cloud to your advantage. The fish see that. They're like, what is that? What am I? They're fine to go over and puff through that dust. They're using their lateral line when they get close enough, and they feel that jig. They don't have to see it. So plus it eliminates the fish getting a great look at that jig. They don't see that it's an artificial bait. And you move that thing, you're crawling it, they're moving it through that dirt. Fish are very happy to go eat crawdads out of the mud, and that's where they're crawling out of, and they're very happy to go eat your jig out of that mud. So, yeah, use the jig.
For sure.
What, Mike, do you have a suggestion for a river jig?
I think probably the most all-purpose river jig that we sell, at least to a lot of guys in the Mississippi around here, is the Apex swim jig. So in the line of swim jigs that we sort of have as a brand, the Apex is sort of the version that almost like fits the shad profile here almost perfectly in terms of size. So we make a Punisher swim jig, which, is all the way up to a 1/2 ounce in size. It's a really big offering for us. And then we've got our mini swim, which was this year's new product. But the Apex swim jig is the best-selling swim jig that we have in that line of products. And, based on its size, like, it really does fit that average size of that shad profile, which the guys on the river really love. And then we've got, 5 or 6 different shad colors based on water clarity, which you wouldn't think makes a huge difference, but it really does. That shad color will go all the way from almost a pure white to almost like a translucent silver in color. And, we've got 5 or 6 different offerings that kind of bridge the gap there based on water clarity. And you want it to look realistic when it comes over brush or a wing dam or, past riprap on the river. Like, those shad colors are legit. You just got to make sure you've got the right color dialed in for the water clarity.
Right on. I want to take a minute and honor a few people that submitted some picks this week. And as you guys know, we love to celebrate your catches, big and small. And so if you've got a catch that you're really proud of, head over to monsterbass.com/PB, upload your catch. It'll feed a leaderboard, and you'll get to see where you stand within the community, within your state, within your water. And so let's just take a look at some of these pictures. All right, this first one is from John Michael Hill, 13 pounds. Oh my God, 13 pounds, 2 ounces. Dang. When I look at this, I can't help but think it could be T-Rex in disguise, but at the same time, he's in Georgia wearing an Alabama hat. He can't have too many friends. Yeah. Next up, we got Michael Duncan, 6 pounds, 2 ounces. Oh,
nice.
Are you talking about Michael or the fish?
Yeah. Fair enough. 6 pounds, 2 ounces. He caught on a deep diving crankbait. Next up, Brian Badger. I hope he's from Wisconsin, but he's not. Caught on a chatterbait, 6 pounds, 2 ounces. He's got a good sized belly. And then last but not least, did he catch this? Lewis Sibley, 5 pounds, 1 ounce. Or no, sorry. Ernie Mosley, 10 pounds, 2 ounces. On a weightless angry beaver from Vicious.
It looks like one of those like singing bass.
Yeah, right?
Actually,
I'm looking at it looks like a mailbox. I'm looking at the bait. It's not even the same bait. Anyway. And then last but not least, Lewis Sibley, 5 pounds, 1 ounces out of Michigan on a drop shot. So
Nice.
yeah, there you go. So if you've got a catch you're proud of, upload it to monsterbass.com/PB. And if we use your pick, we'll send you something. And congratulations to you guys for all your catches.
Very good.
Nice work.
Yeah. How you doing, Rafi?
I was glad my sound didn't work.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Because you wanted nothing to do with ice fishing.
No. Ice fishing is a great excuse to drink. I'm all about it. Mm-hmm. But I just got all this time to admire this wonderful sticker.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah. Oh. Fishing with T-Rex.
Yeah, there you go. It's a commemorative. You can it's like from the Franklin Mint.
Yeah. And T-Rex has been in the chat asking me to like pull one out of your wallet, so I did.
Because I keep them in my wallet.
Yeah.
You do.
Everyone does. Like T-Rex bucks. No,
It's more impressive. It's the new condom.
I was going to say, you hold that up, it's birth control, but we won't talk about that. We don't want to disrespect T-Rex.
No,
It's good.
we love those stickers. We love those stickers. Rafi,
Yes, sir.
do we have a clip of the week that you want to fire up for all of us?
We do have a clip of the week that I want to fire up for all of us, and it's actually topical. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I think it happened within the last week or so, or at least the story caught fire.
Let's see.
Without further ado, or with little further
With
ado,
a time of ado. Yeah.
with a little dash of ado.
I need help finding this guy. Fishing this point, and this guy decided to run right on top of me.
Fucking fish is right here. You can go right through the middle and stay right in front of me. Huh? You can go right through the middle and stay right in front of me. You didn't see me there.
She's over here, man, this side.
Appreciate you blowing out my spot. I was catching them good till you blow the fucking thing out.
What?
I appreciate you blowing out my spot. I was catching them pretty fucking good.
If anyone knows.
So messed up.
Oh my God.
Like, all right. So does that really happen, or is this just like a one-off? Because that was insane to me.
I'm just going to tell you, nothing like that. But Kelly and I have this long-standing joke. We're fishing always at our local lake. And people are out on pontoon boats, friends that we have, whatever. Inevitably, every time they have the entire lake, they come over with their boat right next to you and they ask you, hey, how's the fishing? And I always say, this is great till you came over. It was fine. So that guy protected on the point, fishing, that interaction, and then a jet skier to do that. I don't know. I'd be casting maybe my biggest bait at that guy, but that's pretty messed up. That's sad that happens in this world. And then the reality is like that guy could have lost some gear, and the real tragedy, he falls in the water, he gets cold, hypothermia. That guy could die. And that's the severity of being out in a situation like that. So not cool.
Yeah. Well, it was in Florida, so like the weather was like 78.
That's
so
fine.
it's okay.
Okay, so maybe he could get eaten by a gator. So that's the other thing. But yeah, that was messed up. So
Yeah.
I should take
It
a
is
moment.
funny though.
Go ahead.
Oh no, let's take your moment.
I was just going to take a moment to apologize to Tim Duncan and Tristan for the bad words tonight. Hopefully the fishing tips that we gave you outweighed the foul language that guy used. So
Yeah. How
Our
amazing
apologies.
would it be if that is like the Tim Duncan?
maybe it is.
I know. I'm excited.
Yeah, so excited. So, all right, man. Rafi, did
All right,
you?
what'd I miss?
Oh, you missed the whole show. We're talking about jigs.
How about jigs? I wanted to ask is how do we take a jig? Because Mike, looking at your website, and I want Rafi to hear all this, like because Rafi's managing a bait brand, going from a jig that's $5, $6, $7. I don't know what the top price point is of your jigs. How do they justify in the jig world by adding a blade in the front of it, which arguably is a split ring and then a $1 blade? Maybe I'm going to go crazy and say it's not even a $1 blade. How do you justify adding a piece of metal in front of it and then charging $20? How does that work? Can you give some insight to that?
Well, I can tell you if it's made domestically, I can tell you exactly why it is. Because somebody has to do that with their hands and a tool. So, if I'm getting it, I'm buying all my components separate, and my stuff is mostly assembled. Lucky for me, like I do some packaging work and I do some other things with it. But if I had to split ring a blade onto the front end of every one of my jigs, I'm sorry, bud. It's $2 more, and that's just because
I'm saying 20. Like they go from a $5 jig to a $20 jig, and that's you brought in the secondary piece. Gluing in a weed guard,
Yeah.
gluing, hand tying, whether hand tied or whatever, making a jig. Why do you think that? I guess this is just a personal question, just if you can gut response. Why are jigs pigeonholed under $10? Because you have more involvement when you get a crankbait. And I know there's some pieces of that, but if you're hand tying these jigs and doing all this work, using the right hook, why are jigs? Why do you think they're stuck in that lower price range compared to other baits?
That's a great question.
That's a really good question.
Like the birth. It's like the birth of the jig mafia right here. People throwing big jigs now on the Delta.
Yeah. Well, and it like in the skirted jig world, like that they've just kind of settled where they've settled. Like even now with tungsten, the price came out and it was a few bucks higher, and that's even now come down where, I mean, on the premium end of the skirted jig world, you're going to pay somewhere between $6 and $8. When you start doing some of the crazy stuff, like the chicken jig here is like a thing, and it's a preacher, I think a preacher down south, a chicken jig here in the north, which is just a big hand tied like piece of either synthetic or bucktail on like a big jig head with a long shank hook of some kind on it, and they get quite a bit more money for one of those. But I mean, your lead costs more, your hook costs more, the material that goes into tying one of those is more. Like I don't feel like any of them are truly out of bounds in terms of what they're charging, just because I know what goes into making one. So, if it's a mass produced product coming from, wherever, it's going to be cheaper because you're just getting a better price on it. But, if you're doing it like I'm doing it here, it just costs more, just because it does. I don't know what else to tell you.
No, and my buddy makes a big bladed jig known as a donkey slayer, and he's doing good work for you because he charges $50 for one bladed jig, and people are like, "What's going on?" And he's got orders lined up because he powder coats the blade individually, matches the powder coating to powder coating the weight, and then the way he's tying it on, and he's got to make sure that the bladed jig is put together to where the chatterbait brand won't bug him. So there's all these different pieces. And it takes hours. Then he's hand doing his own, like the keeper. When I see what other jig brands are doing, and I have some buddies that tie, I tied flies. And so I know what it takes to put each jig head in the jig and then to tie the thing up. And so knowing that, I just always wonder, like, jigs should be $10, $11. And the reality is I can fish jigs for a long, long time, knowing you can go silicone skirts, living rubber. Do you see that as a trend in the future with almost like your baits are more custom baits? Do you see the availability of hopefully charging more? I mean, obviously every business is like, oh, I want to keep our prices down, but it's hard in my mind to make money on an item that's only $6, $7 with all that personal work that goes into it. But I don't know if you can share any ideas of that.
Yeah, I think it's just volume. So at the end of the day, like I'll have people that are going to pay or willing to pay whatever the price is for, our product if they really believe in it. And in fishing, like confidence is everything. So if you're bought into the idea of a product, price no longer matters. It's premium, and it's a purchase made on confidence, knowing that like if you're fishing a club tournament or you've got one Saturday out of the next 3 to go fish and you got to catch them, like you're going to buy nice stuff to go and fish with. Do I need to feel like I need to charge more at any point? I don't think so. I think it's a volume game. Like, I'll make my money as the brand grows and more people are exposed to the product and start to believe in it, like the customers that I've got now. So, what started as a brand that did, a few $1,000s worth of business, now is, this little room behind me, we'll ship and package and, move 6 figures worth of product out of this little bitty room this year. So,
That's awesome.
That's not fake. Like people start to latch on to the product, and your one tournament partner tells another guy who tell somebody else. And, if it was bad product, I mean, people see through that. So, I'll be at the top end of the spectrum wherever the market goes in terms of price, just because I've got more into it than some of the mass produced stuff.
No, I want people. Yeah, Rick, I want to hear it, because you're in the same boat of making baits, and it's fun for an outsider to sit back and think Mike could take his brand and charge 50 cents or $1 more and probably still do okay. But he's more interested as a business owner to sell more volume to make that extra 50 cents or $1, and how that translates. And I think consumers need to sometimes consider that. It's like, wow, this person is invested in me getting a bait at the best price, rather than just gouging and looking for profits. And I think sometimes we miss that as a consumer. It's like, I want to buy this bait because I know it's going to work, and it's this pro angler's using it, whatever. But really, the brand is owned by Mike or Rick, and they're investing in me to be able to get products at a reasonable price. And a reasonable price could easily be 50 cents more. But you're like, no, I can make my business make sense. The consumer gets a better product at a better price, and you're just going to do that's more work to make and sell more, but you're willing to make your money that way. So I am excited when I hear that story, and I want that to resonate with more people. But Rick, you do this every day. I mean, this is what you do, whatever bait it is. And you've kept prices very reasonable, whether it's rods or baits. You're willing to sell more to make more money rather than gouge people. So I think that's something that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's making a quality product that's approachable, and making something that people are willing to take a chance on the very first time. And I think as long as you continue to develop quality products and put it out there, I think people will continue to buy it. I did have a question though. You talked about silicone versus living rubber. Tell me the difference. Like, how does silicone versus living rubber change the action of the jig?
Sure. So that living rubber is actually, it's funny we're talking about this, because that will be coming this. So one of the deviations of the Ace jig will feature a living rubber skirt this next year. And, it's not new. I mean, it might be the original skirt material, like in terms of rubber, to be honest. It's just round extruded rubber. And what it does, like the buoyancy of it, like it just flares out. It has a tendency to just like slowly puff and move in the water, and it really does look alive. That's where the term living rubber comes from. So it's just that formula, that blend of rubber in the water just moves different than a traditional silicone skirt does. So sometimes I think the skirt material itself. Sometimes I think it's about fish being conditioned to seeing something over and over and over again. So, I'll have that living rubber product. We'll have products with, traditional, strand silicone skirt. And then, kind of our claim to fame is the thin cut silicone that, moves different even yet. So, it's all about, again, super serving that customer and just having a tool for whatever the job is.
Do you have a confidence trailer for jigs?
Oh yeah. Like it's a Crush City cleanup craw. Like not even close. Like that, I got so on that thing this year. Like that product, and I trim it down. Like I just kind of cut the top section off of it, and like I can't even begin to imagine how many packs of those things that I burned through this summer.
So I ask everyone this question: when you're fishing a jig and you have a craw on it, do you think the fish at certain times think that's a crawdad and sometimes a fish? Like, what in your mind are you fishing? Are you moving along a bait fish and they're connecting as a bait fish, or are you connecting with fish because you think you're presenting a crawdad?
So maybe it's a combination of both, right? In the grass, like in the north, like your bluegills, once like they're done spawning, or if like it's the juvenile kind of big clouds of them, like they're typically suspended over open water in the summertime, but they spend a lot of the year like on top of the weed bed or the edge. They might be in and around some of those sunken brush piles. They might be no different than shad. And the bass are just set up, and everybody's heard this, but they're predatory fish. Like they're either chasing bait, or they're set up in a place where when the bait comes by them, that they're going to eat it. So, if it is minnows and you're fishing a jig that's very much a shad color or a bluegill color, um, when it's brought past their nose in a direction, if they're set up to feed, yeah, that's what they're eating that day. If you're fishing rock, riprap, and I mean, there's not a sunfish within a quarter mile of where you're at. I mean, but you know that there's fish in the area. They're eating crawdads. So it's sort of like a nose up in the water column or a nose down in the water column idea in terms of like, what do we think they're eating? Because if we don't know and we're just going fishing, I mean, we're always going to start probably by just flipping the bottom and seeing if we get bit. And then, we'll make adjustments from there based on what we see with our eyes and our electronics. And, the fish kind of have to give you a little bit of help. It sure helps to get a bite or two along the way to help you kind of dial in your pattern.
Did you ever fly fish?
I grew up on a trout stream.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you use nose up, nose down. That's kind of more fly fishing, like if you're nymphing, whatever, wet fly, depending, dry fly. I think a lot of anglers don't consider that is
Mhm.
where the fish sits and where they're keying in on their forage. And are they sitting lower than the forage that they're feeding on and predatory attacking it, or are they going down and attacking it, feeding down? So I think that's really important to figure that out. When I ask this whole idea of like, what are you fishing with? Is it a crawdad or a fish? My answer sometimes like, I have no idea. And I've had a lot of luck catching fish on a jig with a Ned rig trailer. So a standard stick bait, the back end of a Cinco, whatever you want to use, put that on the back of a football jig and see what happens. Put that on the back of a finesse jig, and it's phenomenal when you talk about the tests of putting a crawdad in front of fish. And they use this armature situation where they take one appendage off the crawdad and they present two crawdads. Well, the fish go to the one with one missing arm. And then they take off another part of the crawdad. And every time it went towards the crawdad that had less appendages. And so that's where a Ned rig got super exciting and you're fishing with these stick baits. Try a stick bait on the back of your jig. And that's what I tell people is like, you nailed it. I don't care what the fish are eating. I use swim jigs a lot with a crawdad trailer, but I also use them a lot with a swim, like a swim bait trailer. So it's fun to know that you're fishing them. Sounds like you use the same trailer in all applications. And that's the same thing with this chatter style bait. Trailers, you can use a chatter bait with just like endless, with a piece of plastic on the back of it, fish are keying into that thing. So sometimes it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The only thing I'd add is like, forward facing sonar has changed so much of what we do and how we do it. And you get in some situations, you get the opportunity to see how the fish are set up before you ever make a cast. With a jig, I've started a trend in a lot of cases, like everybody wants to go micro and super light. Our big flipping jig, our preacher jig in a 3/4 ounce is an absolute cannonball. And now, like for a big portion of the summer, it was hard to get fish to react to some of the slow falling jig, some of the really finessed fish kind of techniques. Like I had some of the best days of my summer dropping that 3/4 ounce cannonball on their head. And like they didn't have time to think about what it was. They were not trying to figure, is this a crawdad? Is this a bluegill? It was going by them so fast. All they had time to do was eat it. And like I did a lot of that this summer. Like the bigger, heavier stuff, like outperformed, some of the finessey, like really tactical presentation, situations, like for the bulk of the summer, at least for me.
Yeah, the cannonball is huge. Cannonball is, it's funny because I never knew that term was a term for fishing, like a 1 ounce weight, almost set up like a Tokyo rig. And so I've had a lot of success with that as well. I think the fun part of that is you're catching a fish and the fish doesn't have time to think. It's fun, that true reaction strike. The fish has to eat that thing because its brain sees something moving so fast. It's reacting truly to that bait falling that quick. And that's fun to know that you've just tricked them. And I cast the bait super far away and then yo-yo it back, truly cannonballing a 1 ounce. And so you're dead on. I go from really big to maybe really small. Going back to living rubber for a minute, have you noticed sometimes when you go too much living rubber, have you noticed that it kind of balls up and almost covers the hook and you almost are maybe missing fish on a hook set? Have you dealt with that yet?
Yeah, like you're leading me so much here. Like I appreciate this. And we didn't talk about this, like, but this is great. So, in order to prevent that, on the Ace platform, we're actually going to go up. We're going to move up a size in hook. So I'm not taking the jig that I've already got in the Ace and try to, pound square pegs into the rolls. Like, so we're going to modify that design, put a different custom Gamakatsu hook in it to offset the bulk of the skirt that you get with the living rubber. So, again, like, if you're a jig nerd, like you appreciate what that is. If I was just trying to sell product, you'd put the skirt on it.
This guy knows his business. This is the fun part of like, oh my gosh, you're dealing with people that are fishing. You put that bulky living rubber around it. It does its magic. And then sometimes, depending on how it falls, that magical skirt can kind of ball up. Fish takes it. You set a hook set. You're like, how did I miss that fish? That living rubber, you pull that up and it's like all clustered up with that weed guard. And you're like, dang it. Should I trim it? Should I do a mix of living rubber with the standard silicone? So it's fun. Can I ask you on hooks? Have you ever had to go backwards to a more flexible hook to allow some flex and not constantly make the hole bigger in the fish's mouth? Tell me a little bit about your evolution of what hooks you've chosen. Because I've talked to a lot of guys where their hook was too stout and they lost a lot of fish near the boat. But have you gone and dealt with that a little bit?
I think that what we've really reduced it down to here is when I sort of took over the company, we had a few different kinds of hooks in some of the different jigs. So there was everything from owner to some non-name brand hooks to some Gamakatsu hooks. And what I've sort of found over the course of the year is that Gamakatsu platform and the hook that I've got in the Ace jig, in the Breacher jig, in the mini swim, like really is the perfect combination of like diameter and like strength. I don't feel there's a situation fishing braided line or fluoro where I'm either not getting enough penetration because of, the hook is too stout or it's, too big a hook. And on the flip side, like I'm not straightening hooks, to the point where like I feel like I'm going to lose a fish because my drag's not set. It's set too tight and I'm just going to straighten it out on a hook set. So like through trial and error, I feel like I've ended up in a place where I really trust that Gamakatsu hook. I'm obviously not paid by them. Like I pay them.
Yeah, you got to buy it.
Buy their stuff.
You choose. You're choosing to buy it. That's cool.
Well, I could go cheaper too, right? And try to find a substitute. But like, I really believe like that's the one. That's your strength. That's the combination of like strength and diameter that I think just makes for a really good jig.
That's awesome.
Love it. Where's Rafi? You still there, Rafi?
Learning about jigs and wishing Tristan a happy birthday.
Hey, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Tristan. So,
birthday.
There was one other question. Patrick, what's your favorite way to fish a jig?
Mine
Yeah.
would 100% be like, give me 12 to 14 feet of milfoil or coontail and a 5/8 or 3/4 ounce jig with heavy line and a heavy rod. This is like, we're not scoping anything. It's not a finessey, approach. This is me dropping the meat right on their head, and it's a bang bang scenario. Like, you feel the bite, you feel the dead weight, and you jack them, and you winch them straight to the boat. It's only a wrestling match on my end. The fish will lose. Like, you set the hook and you winch them in.
Love it. Well,
That's tough. That's the big guy of fish. That's the sport of fishing. That is that. I hate to use even the term like the masculine side, like truly allowing you with a hook that won't bend out. You get the boat flip the fish. You're not finesse fighting it. You're not playing with drag to be able to lay into it. That is a unique experience of fishing a jig versus almost any other bait. And that is something you have to experience to understand. So I second you. Like, that's a blast. It's fun for me at 23, 25 feet. The fish are still very active, and you feel that it hits the bottom. If you can get it on that first or second bounce, like you're saying, the fish wants it. It's aggressive. You set that hook, and that's magic time. So that's awesome.
love it. Love it.
Is that why you don't let women on the boat, Chris?
Yeah, what's sad is my wife, she'll hook set so hard now that she'll hit me with her rod. Like, and it's fun because when you're fishing with two people, it's clever because at a certain point I miss fish because Kelly will be standing closer to one side and I can't sweep set or whatever. So it's a skill to fish close to somebody and fish with a jig because you've got to move that rod quite a bit. So yeah, I think women start to enjoy that maybe more than men because that full lean back, that draw, that snag, that hook, like, we won't even get to that topic. Women are just fine at fishing the jig.
They are indeed. They are indeed. And I've learned a lot today, and now I've got to go out and go fishing and throw a jig and see what we can do. Although I will admit, you guys got me worried about the set because. Rafi and I, when we went fishing the last time, we weren't so good at it. And
Nope.
So give me Mike, before we let you go, I'm a first time jig fisherman. What's the one tip you want to leave me with?
Just keep it really simple in terms of your approach. Like, if you're a first time jig fisherman, grab one that's, 3/8 ounce in size and throw it at visual structure, throw it at a dock post, throw it at a tree in the water, throw it, into a clump of lily pads, whatever it is. Like, keep it simple on a medium heavy rod, throw it at visual structure and just let it fall to the bottom and let it do its thing. Like in its most simple form, that's how you're going to get bit, the majority of the time anyway. So just keep it simple, throw it visual structure, and just pay attention to what you feel, because every time you do that, like, you're mapping a little bit of the bottom, you're getting a very good understanding of what's in the water in front of you. And I think it's just a great tool for catching fish. It's a great tool for learning fish behavior as well.
Appreciate it. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Rick, I was going to say, Mike doesn't know this about you. Mike, just so you know, Rick can't have any pause when he's fishing a frog. He doesn't have the ability to wait a nanosecond. So this is beautiful for you, Rick. Set the hook. Yeah. Even set the hook when you think you don't need to set the hook. It's fine if that jig is ripped up out of the grass accidentally and then it falls back down. It's a great way to fish a jig. So lay into it. It's not like a frog. There's no delay. Get after it. So you'll have some fun.
I love it. I love it. Mike, where can if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Yeah, come to the website, untamedtackle.com. We've got all the products obviously listed on there. Tackle Warehouse is a great partner. Omnia Fishing is a great partner of ours. And then we've got some good local retail right here in the Twin Cities, where we're just rich with awesome awesome independent retailers like Thorn Brothers, Waypoint Angler Supply, do a really great job. So, yeah, you can find it. The internet is a great tool for us, and we've got really good retailers that are super capable and, more importantly, in stock most of the time. It's sometimes hard to keep up, but we're at a great time of year to get your hands on some.
Awesome. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us, and really enjoyed having you on the show, and I wish you the best of luck. And I'm sure that we're going to be hearing a lot more about Untamed Tackle.
Guys, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you being on the show. Thanks a lot, man. There you go, man. I learned a lot about jigs today.
No, he knows his stuff. The guy, I mean, it's fun to see. Obviously, Monster Bass has a wide range. He's narrowed into just one specific technique. And within that technique, he's covered all the different water columns. You and I talk about that a lot, like fishing high, fishing middle, fishing low. Just with the jig, you can go out 5 or 6 different jigs from his website, and you can cover all the water columns. So it's cool to see that he's a jig fisherman. And he gets excited when you're asking him a question. He gets excited about the details. And so you want to learn about jigs, he's the guy. That's fun.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought you put me in timeout, Rick. Why am I muted?
No, you're here. The fun part is what a cool pairing is. You got a jig, and then happens to be a guy over there, Rafi, that's got some of the best trailers out there. And so that's that beautiful piece is when you're talking about what works best on the back of a jig. You got this Grande Bass brand and these plastics and kind of going unorthodox. And I was doing that on the back of a chatterbait style jig and putting a rattler on the back. Like that works so good. And that's not what you would normally think. And so that's
nothing warmed my heart so much as him looking in the camera and saying, without a doubt, the Rapala Crush City cleanup craw.
Yeah, Rafi. I wanted to make sure that we touched upon that.
I thought he kind of leaned forward at you when you said that.
Yeah.
No, it's good. What an opportunity. Like, hey, I'm going to win this guy over to our soft plastics. And so I just think it's cool when you have, and I didn't really even talk to him about it. Jigs work almost despite the trailer at times when fish are just seeing that jig come down. But then sometimes you have to have the right trailer. And I've been messing with that a lot where I'll catch 2 or 3 fish. I'll change the trailer to see if it makes a difference. And I can't buy a bite when the trailer is changed. So you're in the right seat, Rafi. What a good pairing to have. I mean, he doesn't have soft plastics. And that was a question I kind of wanted to ask him. But, it didn't come up because we didn't have enough time. But, man, he's got jigs that are working. And you kind of have some soft plastics that do just as good. So,
you do. It might be like the peanut butter and chocolate moment that everyone's looking for.
I love it.
Remember those commercials where they bumped into each other and, like, it accidentally fell? Like, you need to make that commercial. He's got his jig and, boom, it falls into your little bag. And
could you imagine just making that commercial with a hook? I would probably make that commercial with Milk Duds and popcorn, though.
Oh, I love Milk Duds and popcorn.
That's right.
Yeah,
they're so good.
Milk Duds are good. I'm a fan.
What
a good show!
And your 3 days of no food. Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm fine with it. I'm going to try to eat healthy for a little while. I have this goal. I wanted to get under 200 pounds, and I'm really, I'm like just knocking on the door. So it's fun. Good times.
Yeah.
Nice.
I feel like I need.
How tall are you?
Now. 6'5". So I'm 6'5". Today 205. So I got 5 to go. So we'll see what happens.
Well, Diplo approved. Hey,
Diplo run, but also I think we got to still climb like Kilimanjaro or something. So I'm ready. I'm ready. We're gonna be running up that thing.
I'd like to do the ice fishing. I'm not gonna lie. Like I really want to go ice fishing.
It does sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a brand. There's actually this company called Sweat Tents, and they make a portable sauna. And I want to bring that ice fishing, like literally super warm, nice. Drill a hole in the bottom. You don't have to make the tent 200 degrees, but the fact that you could, I want to be warm ice fishing. And so
I think you just want to take your wife ice fishing because I don't want to sit in a sauna with Rafi.
Come on, Rafi. Hey, Rafi. I was sitting in a sauna.
Thank you.
I was sitting there with maybe we're just wearing Rafi socks, okay? Like me, you, ice fishing. Yeah, Rick now all of a sudden Rick wants to go.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Just the socks, just the socks. All right, guys, listen, great show, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Let's do it. See you
All
guys.
right.
Later.
Bye. Man, that was a good show. He's a good dude. And like you said, like I literally just ran into this guy at ICAST and we've just stayed in touch. And it's so funny the number of people that I've met like over the years in this same capacity where I'm just walking through and it's like, hey, what's up? And that's just how this industry works. This industry is filled with like such good people. I love it. I love it so much. I want to thank you guys. As a reminder, you can always catch us on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, wherever you like to get your podcast. So if you liked what you saw today, please hit the thumbs up. It'll help me. It'll help my ego and cut down on my therapy costs. We got a couple things for you. I do want to do my picks because I got a bunch of email from some of you guys hating on my picks, but my picks were so good, I'm going to give them to you again. So you ready? I like the Falcons over the Saints. I like the Bucks over the 49ers, the Bills over the Colts. And this one I'm just throwing in out of spite. The Eagles out of the Cowboys, because the sooner the Cowboys can get rid of Coach McCarthy, he's awful. He is awful. All right, let's get to the golden ticket. I know you guys are excited for that because we got to get to the taco truck. We got some things to do tonight. So, again, your box comes with an individually numbered golden ticket. If you've got a golden ticket, pull it out now. And if for some reason I call your number and I pray, I'm dying to have someone on the show so they can tell me that they won and I can send them all their stuff. But if I pull your number, email me at marketing@monsterbass.com. Take a picture of your ticket, send it to me. Make sure you give me your contact information, your email or your address, your phone number, so I can give you a call. So tonight's golden ticket number is 8216. 8216. So there you have it, guys. Another banger of a show. Again, hit the thumbs up button on the way out. Thanks for being with us tonight, and we'll see you next week.